Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for Wish You Were Here. Some brief notes on the history of postcards. We get started, I just want to mention you can find all of our programs, both these virtual programs and in person, in our program guide. And we have a virtual program coming up next week. What are you reading? Where I'll be joined by different staff members and we talk about recent books we've read, some we like, some not so much. But today I am joined by Corey Seaman. Hello.
Hello.
And we're here for the history of postcards.
Okay, thank you, Kevin, very much, and thank you, Rachel, for inviting me. I'm real excited to speak to everyone about this is a new program that we've created, and about sort of spanning the history of postcards. Um, Kevin is putting into the link some um, information, some links that we would normally do in person, but I'm going to go ahead and focus and let you pursue those. We do have a lot of good resources, and maybe he'll put this out at the end as well. But I'm going to go ahead and, so far as talking about sort of this is the overview. What we're going to do is introduce the topic and me, talk about some fun things about postcards, look at them historically and visually, and then just visually, look at them textually, look at them in a comical sense, look at them in an ephemeral sense, and as a collectible sense. So we're going to look at a few different things. There's an awful lot of ground to cover in an hour, but we're going to try to do it. Um, the Talk about fun with postcards and some additional resources. And so, really important, and this is, I'm not going to read this except for the bottom, the key takeaways. I want to learn about the history of postcards and how they've served as uh, it changed over the course of the many years, about the 150 years that they've been in existence. Some examples of different types of postcards that were produced as printing and photography production has changed over the years. See different subjects that adorn the fronts of postcards, and see the use of postcards as a communication tool. If you do have any questions or comments, please go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll try to respond. I'm having a problem sharing comments here, but certainly if I have them, I can answer them back electronically. These are the links that Kevin has put into the chat. The program page is for all my library programs. Wish you were here. It's squirreldude.com, photography programs. Wish you were here. That is one specific for this particular program, and it will have links to resources if you want to find additional readings, books via Melcat, all sorts of things. You'll be able to find links there, and that's continually growing. And then there's photography follow up answers. So if people ask questions during sessions and I don't know the answers, what I'll do is I'll go and I'll research it, and then I'll go ahead and update it on this page. So this is got a lot of information about all sorts of photography topics, but it's really driven by the patrons. So about me, I'm actually in my office space right now. Been a librarian here at the University of Michigan since November 2005, so it's quite a long time. I was formerly an archivist at three different institutions: the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, Historical Society of Western Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh, and Chicago Historical Society. And in my historical collections that I curated and managed, postcards are very important visual elements in these collections. So it's something I've often been really focused on. Um, from a photography standpoint, I come at this as being a huge user. There's my Flickr address, it's flickr.com, photos, C. Seaman. And I've participated in Project 365, where you basically take and share a photo every day, and I've been doing that since June 12th, 2008. and I'm never without a camera. This is basically a trip to New York City where we stayed in the TWA hotel. That's the flight center. We get to see A380s, which plane we don't see in Detroit. My wife does creates these doll artists, fashion dolls, and those are Barbie dolls with her original dresses. That was from the convention. We visited my son on the way to Pittsburgh, and I got to visit squirrels in Central Park. You're going to see a lot of squirrels today because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Speaking of my son, this is him in 2002. And when where do my interest in postcards come from? A lot of it really focuses on the boys. Um, and when the boys were young, I was traveling for a software company, and every time I went to a new city, I would send them a postcard, and they often would arrive after I returned. But I also went to the Baseball of Fame, and I would send them 10 or 12 postcards each for on the drive. Very interested in lighthouses, and I would stop there on the way, and very interested in Niagara Falls, etc. And you can see on these that I was writing haikus at the time. This is 2008. And so each of those greetings is a haiku. And then I created these address labels to make it easier for me to send them cards. But I've, the boys weren't interested in holding on to these, so I have them now. So cameras are very capable of stopping time, but postcards transport you back in time. And these have been around for just about 150 years, and they document the history of our world since then. I found this card. I really like it. There's nothing special about it except the name Corey's Fine Food. It's spelled the same way. I've been to Vegas only once, and it was in the airport. But I love the way this card looks, and I went and I picked that up as I was doing research for this. Postcards are extremely appealing. They provide, in many regards, better pictures than the ones that we take, different vantage points, better weather. We were traveling recently in some of the cities that we visited. It was pouring rain that day. So you're just not going to get a great picture. So to be able to get an image of what it was like when it's better weather is very appealing. And then this is the Shrine of the Little Flower. It's listed as Detroit, but it's in Royal Oak now. It's color in a black and white world. That might have been something you would have seen if you drove past it at night. But this is around World War II. If you had a photo, it would have been black and white. And this is a postcard for the United News Corporation of Detroit around World War II. And this is actually from Kurt Tyke, and we'll talk about them in a bit. Postcards are very appealing. It's where you've been, where you're going, and where you are. I have to re-scan this. And I should point out, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, it says Seaman July 26. That's when the last time I've updated this. So it was just not that long ago. But within the next couple weeks, I'll update it again. So when you go to the program page where you can actually get a copy of this, you'll see it updated. It'll always change. I really like this. This is Greetings from the Ohio Turnpike. It says, Dear Ma, left Peoria Sunday morning on the way to Washington, D.C. This turnpike is a swell highway. I cut it off there. But it's kind of nice to see that. And I'm very, very interested in the writing that's on the back of postcards. I think it's just as much fun as what's in front. This is a very typical postcard. We have the block letters, and a lot of times they have a different scene in each letter. So this is Port Huron, Michigan, greetings from. The thing I really love about this is that, and I have the back. P is the post office, O is the Mackinac races, R is Point to Bark, and T is the lighthouse in Port Huron, then the Edison Monument, Huron Avenue, Lakeside Park, Assembly Hall, and Indian carving. So you do see all of that. Not many of the ones that I've seen have that kind of clarity on the back, but I think it's really great. So postcards to me are fascinating for what the image depicts, especially the older ones and what they choose to publish, how they take a black and white photo and basically colorize it to create an image that they find interesting, and someone invest money into make it available for people to purchase. I think it's interesting for the text that's printed on the reverse. And if we go back here, we can see the keys to the views on the other side, the post office, etc. And I think it's also interesting for the text that's written on when things are mailed or given. And that's why I always prefer used cards, even if they're a little banged up. This is one such thing. The initial joy of postcards from a travel perspective is you can connect with friends and family while still traveling. And this is from 1949. And the reason why I chose a picture of City Hall of Sioux Falls is because there's a book that I've listed in my resources about the Kurt Tyke Company that really looked at that picture, really looked at that postcard. This is from the Kurt Tyke Company. You can see right in the middle. I'm going to see. I don't know if the mouse is showing up. Yeah, it is. Um, Genuine Kurt Tyke Chicago color tone. You can see over here, I'm using my mouse as a pointer, distributed by Dakota News Agency in Sioux Falls. And over here, you have a code. It's 7AH1798. And what it does is it tells you what year, and this is 19, I think 37. It tells you what year it was created. And they may have bought a whole box and it might have taken 10 years to sell them all, or it may have been sitting on someone's mantle for years before they used it. The message is just, we got to South Falls on our way to Yellowstone, and they start talking about soldiers that they saw. And it's really, I think, fascinating. You see these little blips. It's almost like you're reading texts from people they might be sending. So it's really, I think, far more interesting to get something, even though, on a used postcard, you'll see things that are like a stamp mark here. To me, it's far better to have it that way. So let's talk about the brief history of postcard. I'm going to focus on these 6 topics. I went through them: historical, visual, textual, comical, ephemeral, and collectible, spending more time in the first 3. So we'll talk about the types of cards that are produced, some statistics, some postcard sizes, um, eras and types of postcards, and leading companies. And this is a lot of what we'll cover today. So stamped cards, are later called postal cards, are blank and are sold by the postal service with the postage already included in it. And these are the first postcards and were commonly used for many years. And I've been meaning to check and see if you can still buy them. I believe you can, although the purpose and value is greatly diminished. Postcards were privately printed and required stamps for mailing. So that was the distinction. Stamped cards or postal cards were from the post office. Postcards as a term were privately printed and required a stamp. We think of these terms together and we lump them together when we're thinking of postcards. Pre-sorted cards are mailed out in bulk by businesses. I just got one from Lighthouse Museum, not the Great Lakes, the National Museum of the Great Lakes. They send out a whole bunch, and it's pre-sorted by zip code, and they get a discount when they send that. And so this might be something that looks like this is the Corral Catering in Birmingham, Michigan. Weddings are their specialty. and 1 out of 3 of their waiters is almost smiling. So that's good. That's good. But that's something that you might see in the pre-sorted. So talking about the first postcards, the very first one was from 1869 in Austria-Hungary. And it is introduced the postal card, the correspondence card. Um, and this is a picture from the Postal Museum. You can see the embossed stamp, and you have the address on one side. And if you flipped it to the other side, it would have the message. And this quickly adopted across Europe. This was, I mean, if there was a craze, this was it. In 1870, 1 year later, the U.S. Postmaster General, John Creswell, proposed to Congress that we should start having them in the U.S. And it took a little bit of time, and they were debating this until 1872. And then the first postal cards were sent in the U.S. in 1873. So it really only took a few years, but by that time, everyone was very focused on this. And this is what the first one looked like. This is from the Smithsonian National Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. This is circa 1873, so the first year. United States postal card, you put address in the front, postage is 1 cent, and then you flip on the other side, and that's where you put the message. And if we look at the statistics, these are the postal cards. These are the ones from the Postal Service. And they went from about 100,000 in 1875 up to around 740,000 in 1905, and then basically flattened. But this is actually looking at every 5 years. This is the growth of the postal cards. The cost of sending a postcard or a letter, here you can see the blue is the letter per ounce, the red is the postcard, and the letter for many years was 2 cents and the postcard was 1 cent. And then all of a sudden everything sort of raised pretty quickly. It for the postcard, it was over 10 cents in about 1978, and it went up from there. And right now, I think it's like 45. No, it's like 50 cents. This is the total statistics, except for 1943, of basically what the industry looked like. You can see that a large number of stamped cards were used really up until about 1957, and then you saw a steady decline here. But that was more than sort of filled in by an increase in the number of postal cards. So you could see things in 1926 through 1948 is fairly steady, but then all of a sudden it took off. And then starting in 1999, they were lumped together. So they weren't differentiated according to the US Post Office. And what you'll also notice here is a pretty progressive drop. And this is 2007 when the iPhone came out. So the need to send people a picture from a location is less important when you can snap and share an image with them. The postcard sizes, the initial size was about 3.5 by 5 inches. The most common size today is 4 by 6. Larger postcards are somewhat popular, but require first class postage. So I want to talk about 5 different eras, and we'll sort of go through these in a bit. And people might reference them differently. The reason why I went with these eras is because this is what the U.S. Postal Service uses. And so the private mailing card era, 1898 to 1901, this is when Congress, in 1898, Congress authorized private postcards. It required it to say private mailing card and appeared on the address side. And undivided back was only for the address. And so you can see an example here. I'm going to rescan this. So if you go back and look at the slides later, you'll see it. This is a picture of Emerson House, Concord, and just a person sharing that they visited this. The address is on the front. We see the private mailing card authorized by Act of Congress. We have the stamp in 1892, and then we have a 1 cent stamp. And the funny thing is, it's priced. You'll often see these prices here, but um, that's from the seller. And so it was $5 on this side, $1.50 on this side. I think I end up spending the more expensive side. But you can see a message there. We just returned from the house here, pictured, and other places of interest. So you'll see that they would have a smaller picture to give you room to write a message. Um, Private mailing card. This is, again, you see the information across the top. This is from 1902. This is from Columbus, Ohio. And this is very similar to the ones that you get in Germany. And I have recently purchased one from a town where my family grew up. My mom's family grew up in Geilingen in southern Germany. Um, and the thing I like about this, it says greetings from Columbus, and you'll see here's the state capitol, here's the Board of Trade, here is the Institution for the Deaf and Dumb, this is the Hospital for the Insane, and I forgot what this is. This is another hospital down here, and this is the courthouse. I don't know why they chose what they did, but they did. So it's very, very kind of interesting. These are produced in Leipzig, where it's very popular. I'm gonna scan these again, and so hopefully they'll be a little clearer. Another private mailing card. This one's from Germany. This is from Hildburghausen. It's a city in central Germany, in Thurniga. Um, Graus aus, which is greetings from. So you'll see that in a lot of German cards. And then we pivot to the postcard era, and that's just 5 years, 1902, 1907. The US Postmaster changed the term from private mailing cards to postal card, and earlier ones could still be used, but it still had an undivided back only for the address. And I have a few different examples. This is from Tillamook Lighthouse in Oregon. And you see the address on the one side. You can see who published it here. My dear boy Arthur, and your mom and papa will be home next week, and so there'll be a brief message that you can find. um, Getting to the squirrels. This is squirrels. Apparently squirrels in Capitol Park in Harrisburg, in the capital of Pennsylvania, are very, very popular. And so again, we've got the address on one side, and the back is a sort of artistic rendering of a squirrel. So the pets, quote unquote, today, and since um, we were giving, and we were, and someday we're going to buy peanuts and feed them. So I really am very, very fond of these, of the writer. I think it was Emily. So I think that is definitely a noble endeavor. And speaking of which, here are some squirrels at the University of Michigan. This is an image that was printed in Germany, and it was the manufacturer was someone who is operating in the UK. And so it's just talking about how busy they are at work and school, but they're on campus. And that's a very common picture of a squirrel that we see over and over again. It's a good time to mention that people are often reusing images throughout. In 1907 is the beginning of the divided back era, which features a divided back. So the new regulation allowed for divided back address and message to be on the same side, and this allowed for a larger image on the front, which is this is from Pottstown, Pennsylvania. It's the Warwick Iron and Steel Company. It's just a picture of their plant. in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and you can see that's written and addressed in 1908. It goes to Clinton, Massachusetts. Sometimes reading is tricky, but I like this because it says this space is for writing messages. Early on, it was very important to explicitly share with people what they were doing. This is another one. It's a holiday card. People sending postcards for the holidays were very common, and a lot of them have squirrels, so that's the reason why I like them. What you'll see across the front is that this is a stain, and it could have been from a variety of things. But dear Sarah, I hope you are feeling a lot better than you have been. A very, very simple message, and it went to Sarah Taylor in Bridgewater Cove, Vermont in 1925, many years after the divided back era. Um, the whiteboard era comes next. That's 1915 and 1930. And it's named because it has a white border around. This is actually from Detroit Publishing, which is a great company. We'll talk about them in a little bit. You have one side for a message and one side for the address. Sometimes they were just people would write across both halves and just hand it to someone. But this is a beautiful image of Mackinac built in 1760. What would have happened was that they would have taken a black and white photo and basically used notes to help understand how to colorize it. Here's another one from Detroit Publishing. Um, and it's about the SS Roosevelt passing through State Street Bridge in Chicago. It's very interesting to look at. Um, I don't think many pictures right now would be promoting how much steam and smoke is coming out of the resources. Um, but that's fundamentally how these things operated. So, good news to hear that you are once more at liberty and the children are getting um, to enroll. Glad to get your cards, and we intend to. Um, I can't tell what that says. Information on Wednesday, and so a lot of times the handwriting is really one set of parameters in readings, but it's really about you when you go through correspondence, you actually go through and you learn how someone writes. But with individual postcards, it's kind of hit or miss. The next era is called the Linen Era from 1930 to 1944, and the postcards were often printed with colorful ink on paper with a linen-like um, texture. Kurt-type cards I mentioned before were brilliant here, and this is that same image. City Hall, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. This is a different card. It's unused, but it's the exact same card. Um, and there's a link, and if you go to my website, you'll see that there's a link to actually date, so you'll be able to look at those codes and see what they mean. Um, and then we're going to go over. I did not know that, Rachel. I'm just looking at your note about the GDL's mascot is a squirrel. I think I've never visited, but maybe I'll have to do that. This is the back of that card, again, distributed by Dakota News Company. They're the ones who actually contracted with Kurt Tyke to produce that. What normally happens is, and this is really well documented in that book I was talking about, the the company sends salespeople into the field and they take pictures of everything and they take notes as to what the colors are. So if you look at another card company of the same time, the same city hall, you may actually get different colors because it's what the customer, in this case, the Dakota News Company, actually is interested in. And this is one of those, this is a municipal building a few years later, Sioux Falls, and you can see it kind of doesn't, it looks similar, but the coloring is different because in both instances they're taking a black and white photo and they're tinting it in a way that actually creates color. I love this picture. This is downtown Detroit, the Fisher Building, and very fond of that building. And One of the things I love about this most of all is that you'll see what appears to be the widest of all possible streets. You've got 4 lanes, potentially going this way, and this way could be six because you've got three across here and three across here. And there still seems to be plenty of room to grow. A lot of people walking around. And so you do get a sense of what it may have looked like, albeit the scale is probably off in the evenings. Another one, this is another Kurt Teich. This is the visitor gallery inside Boulder Dam. I don't know why everyone is so terrified of the photographer, but they're leaning way back. Um, and they're basically saying, we're not too interested in coming out, but you do have um, information that was included in the card, which will actually tell you something about how they wanted to portray this particular scene. Photochrome, this is a picture I showed at the beginning. These are postcards. For whatever reason, when you scan these in a flatbed scanner, they come out a little flat, and that's like this one on the right, Palos Verdes, Rancho Palos Verdes, the Wayfarer's Chapel, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. And this is near Portuguese Bend in the greater Los Angeles area. And that is just a beautiful lighthouse. And the image doesn't really do service here. One of the things I'm going to try to do is actually take a photograph of it, which I think will retain a little bit of the brightness. Here's another one. This is also from the photochrome era. This is the Garden State Art Center. This is very close to where I grew up in New Jersey, and it was where every concert we went to, we would go there. And it was in Homedale, New Jersey, where Bruce Springsteen lived for many years. And it was just over 5,000 seat amphitheater, and it was you had rain seats if you were close to if you were underneath that awning, but if you were in the lawn section, you were subject to the elements. So we want to talk about some leading postcard publishers. I talked about a little about Kurt Teich and Detroit Publishing, and I'll talk about all of these, but they're working with agents all over the country, and they're really trying to balance between what a local publisher and distributor would like to have versus what it really is. I think they always deferred to the customer. So if they said they wanted it in a certain color palette, they did. Kurt Teich, like many postcard publishers, they are from German descent. Kurt Teich himself moved to Chicago in 1898 and formed his own company. And they were at the time the world's largest postcard printer. Detroit Publishing is one of the earliest pioneers. They operated from 1895 to 1924, and they basically shut down in the middle of sort of the boom. But they're very prominent in the white border era, and it was founded by William A. Livingstone. And this is the memorial light in honor of William Livingstone is on Belle Isle, and this is a picture from 2015. And I like this because, again, squirrels. And I think of Detroit Publishing as having more scenes of cities, but here's one that's just a real charmer. It's just a squirrel saying, please. And you can see that the back of the car was never mailed, but it said basically a very Merry Christmas for Ruth. And the date, you can see it broken down on the bottom. The space is used for the message, and this is used for the address. Tickner Brothers from Boston. This is a very prominent graphic arts company. And this is Gay Headlights, which is a Martha's Vineyard. And the thing that's interesting is that the road traveled by more than 500 visitors every year. What you can see here is the Gay Head Lighthouse with the building, and that building no longer stands. And if you look at it in this picture, this is a more current lighthouse. There's no building there. So it's not Ticknor, but it's a more modern view of Gay Head Lighthouse. And I didn't have this in the program originally because they weren't huge, but J.C. Hall, Joyce Clyde Hall, first started selling postcards when he and his brothers were that he and his brothers were publishing. And he basically, the rumor has it that he came to Kansas City with 2 boxes of these under his arm. Um, the company would eventually de-emphasize postcards in favor of green cards, and it became Hallmark. Um, and so there's a really great museum in the Hallmark Visitor Center in Kansas City. So if you're ever there, it's kind of neat. And this is a public wading pool, the Grove in Kansas City. Looking at visual representation. So every topic is represented here in postcards, and this is great. This is transportation. This is the steamer, the City of Detroit 3. And again, you have a lot of text here. With this postcard, the more text that you have, the less room there is to write. And so you see just a simple message: Archie feels much better. This morning, the doctor said that he was tonsillitis, but so I will call when I'm home. And so it's kind of neat to see these quick messages. But there's another, and if you look at the steam flowing from those smokestacks, it was definitely not intended to de-emphasize that. I had mentioned my mother's family came from Germany. This is the ship that my grandmother came on, the Albert Balin. And so here's another one. Oh, no, I was wrong. But there you can see on the bottom the German cars and the Hamburg American line, and the length is 191 meters, and the width is 22 meters. So it gives you kind of the German lesson in and of other things. This is a lighthouse in Manistee, Michigan. It's not the one that's currently standing, but those change. One of the things you'll also, when you look at the message, it says, "I will be at Grand Rapids in the morning train on Friday on my way to Lansing." The Postal Service would have 2 pickups and 2 deliveries a day. So you could get messages that would often be delivered the next day without doing anything special. But this is an example of information, very timely information that you could relay in a postcard. A more modern libraries, this is the Bloomfield Township Public Library, and this is a Hiawatha Penrod card. And this is really, I think, kind of neat. I did some training at Bloomfield Township Public Library, so I'm always fond of that. So I found these a lot of things on eBay. Hospitals, 4 hospitals: the John Gaston Hospital, St. Joseph Methodist, and U.S. Veterans Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. And the message has nothing to do with it. It was talking about buying a savings bond. So it doesn't necessarily need to correlate to what the image is. Again, another squirrel. This is a campus pet from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And once more, I'm thinking of you. I don't know if the squirrel reminded the author, but it's possible, and I'd like to think that's the case. And what you see here, this is a squirrel, a very standard squirrel picture that was used by the postcard manufacturers. And that's basically what you're seeing in the upper right-hand corner here. And it said, "Dear Uncle and Aunt, busy at work here, also preparing for the school next fall." And so there's a lot that didn't necessarily deal with squirrels, but it might be something that they knew the recipient was interested in. Um, Here's another card for the holidays. A hurry, little squirrels! Thanksgiving Day is nigh, and the cold winter will be here by and by. I like this, and the way it's addressed is, I hope you will like these little squirrels. Lots of love from Aunt Jean. So even though it's a little scuffed up, I liked it because they mentioned squirrels. It just wasn't an image that they were using and ignoring. This is actually a really cool card. This is from 1898, the Berlin Gewerbebestellung, which is the Great Industrial Exposition of Berlin in 1898. And I have not been able to decipher the text, the German cursive, but that's a sort of a project of mine down the road. But it's a beautiful postcard nonetheless. I thought it was a lighthouse at first until I realized it was Berlin, which is, has some lakes, but is fundamentally landlocked. Um, Another thing, postcard folders, you might remember these. These are going to be basically long lists of postcards that are one-sided. So they're going to be images on both sides, and they're folded up, and you actually send the book. You can put your address down. This Hollywood one you can see here, and then there's typically not a lot of room for writing notes and messages, but you can just be careful about putting them in. Also, into the visuals, there's a phenomena called real photo postcards. These are, I think, quite fascinating. They're typically printed from a special Kodak camera, and the printouts feature a pre-printed back, and the popularity soared when you can add a message. And I just had to have this. This is someone writing about squirrels in Central Park, which are notoriously friendly. Um, and it says the squirrels here are very tame, and that one is climbing up. I've had them climb my legs, but I've never had them quite get to my neck. So that guy must be doing something right. But I think it's really fascinating to see this spell out. It's a very particular. You're not dealing with a pre-produced postcard. You're dealing with something that was very individually connected to the writer. Okay. Um, so that's a summary of sort of the visuals. I want to talk about textual. I was asked at my very first program on this, what is a postcard shower? It seems to be a very commonly accepted term, but one that's not written up anywhere. And like any other type of shower, baby, or wedding, it's showering someone with gifts or love. And so I went through and I dug through and I found some postcard showers when you decide to honor someone's birthday or news or whatever, that you would shower them with postcards. And I purchased this for the program. Um, Never forget you, even if you don't hear from us. May 18th will be Pa's 73rd birthday. We are getting a postcard shower for him. Would you and Bertha please send cards? So that's something that you would do. And it's written up in the news. This is someone who, on his 66th birthday, received 240 cards, which is quite a lot. And there's some additional readings here. So you can go back and look at that when you get a chance. Um, and so you do get to see how people communicate. James Garfield, who was a representative from Ohio at the time in 1871, really felt that having available space for the message that anyone can fundamentally see was potentially dangerous. By passing through so many hands, he thought that a postcard with a libelous message might be a vehicle of great industry to the person and to whom it was addressed. And so that's kind of interesting. But along those lines, I have this example. This is not the example, but I wanted to use this because it's a store, and that's really the sort of the issue that I'm looking for. This is a Kurt Tyke, so you can use that code to look up and find out what the date it is. Um, there was a lawsuit in Kentucky in 1952 called Perry versus Moskin Stores. To promote the sale of merchandise, Moskin Stores sent postcards with feminine handwriting, and it said, "Please call Wabash 1943 and ask for Carolyn." Um, so the recipient, this Perry, his wife got the card first, and he couldn't explain who Carolyn was. And she was convinced that she was having an affair. And apparently she left him. Um, the harmed husband then sued Moskin Stores and won the case and was given a cash settlement. I do not know if he got back together with his wife. That's a mystery that I need to solve for another day. But I think it's really kind of fascinating to see how people jump to the wrong conclusions by virtue of what's on a postcard. Um, I also love this. Um, this is a Northern High School in Flint, and the person wrote in a picture and says, "Me when school starts." And the person who was sending it, Nan, to her sister, said, "You can tell Dick to forget about giving Darcy my love. That stooge still hasn't answered my letter, so he can take a leap." Um, I love the language. I love how it flows. I think it's a lot of fun, and you see this over and over again. And this is just after World War II. This is 1951. QSL cards are written confirmation between two-way radio operators. This operator in Michigan's Pike County is Robert Yaskoff, who is my wife's uncle. And he basically, that was his call number, KD8GQ. And we found these when he had passed away in his house. Pike County is weird because there is no Pike County in Michigan. I don't know exactly where this comes from, but it's really fascinating. And while we're on the topic, it's very fascinating. But he would send these to people to get confirmation that he heard them, and likewise that he received cards as well. But I never saw any of those. Um, Comical cards. Uh, Gee, but this is a lonesome town, says the crow with a hat. My sister-in-law said that her new thing is going to be crows wearing top hats. And so you can search for anything, you can find it with a postcard. Um, Dear sister, just a card to see if you received my letter. Okay, love to all. Is very interesting. You use it as a sort of follow up. Squirrels, like most animals, are all over the place. We're just nuts about this place. I really like this. And the reason why I like this is because you can see here's a full postcard, and then you can see it here as a busy person's correspondence card, where all you would do is you would check off different things. This one is not great because it way too many things checked off. But you would send it and you'd say, "I'm too busy to write." So all you have to do is check off these. So they knew you're doing working, thinking of you, and reading while you're not doing eating, golf, motoring, ball playing, etc. So this is a fun way to see this. Um, Anthropomorphic cats. This is a work of Alfred Manzier. these are cats doing just about everything. And what you see here are the cats that travel. And you can see that this one has a dog, and there was one another I thought that had a dog. This one definitely had it. Um, and this one is heading off. But both of these are related, and both of these are really useful to depict basically a more comical way of looking at what's happening right now. And then you have comical ones, giant vegetables, Kurt Teich. This is potatoes we raise in Maine. Not exactly that real size, but I've also seen this with celery, especially from places in Kalamazoo where that grew a great deal. Um, so with ephemeral, one of the things that I'm going to work on here, um, we think about paper collectors, and paper collectors are going to be collecting postcards, but they're also going to be collecting business cards, advertisements, brochures, basically the list of things that are considered ephemeral go on forever. And I have some links available on my program site that are going to be really useful. But the nature of an ephemeral object, they're low cost and meant to be used, not necessarily kept. Um, and they're wonderful for understanding what artifacts uh, for the time period and when they're made. So if you're interested in the 30, if you can find some brochures, you can get a sense as to what life was like for them back there. And the same as postcards, and the same as um, all of these ephemeral tools. What was really interesting, I traveled last week, and it was kind of amazing to see the number of places that did not sell a lot of postcards. And so right now people are buying postcards less to mail and more to have as those really perfect pictures, um, as a way to capture and save those. Insofar as collectible, I'm really doing okay on time. Um, where to find them? You can find them. You can do a search in Flint or Genesee County or basically anything. I like shopping on eBay, but antique stores, library sales, used bookstores are all really great. What I tend to do is buy lots. So I'll buy between 10 and 100 items, and going through them is just a blast. And sometimes you find things that are really quite enjoyable. I think that's where I found the Flint postcard, Flint High School. Um, since they are paper, they can be damaged by water or critters. If you have mice in your house, they love to snack on anything paper. So it's something that you want to make sure that they're well protected. Amazon and eBay are both good places for finding storage boxes. Archival boxes are really good from archival supply firms. But it and you can also put them in books. My preference is, if you're going to put them in books, to have them in books that are not the magnetic or the sticky back, to put them where they basically are like a 4 by 6 photo album. That would be sufficient. That would be good. And they're also going to be a little more protective from mice, if they're actually in that kind of environment. I do have links to, on the program's website, links to popular culture. There was a great 5-part Yours Truly Johnny Dollar series. That's an old time radio program called The Picture Postcard Banner, where he received 3 postcards, or someone received 3 postcards. Um, and if Johnny Dollar had to figure it out, what he figured out was that if you stood at the location of each of those 3, you would actually look toward the center, and that would tell you where the missing jewels are stored. Post Secret is a resource that's really interesting. People send secrets. Maybe there's something really awful that happened to them, or maybe it's something that they just want to share. or maybe it's something they just don't feel comfortable in sharing, they send it anonymously to this project, and the best ones get reported out. Additionally, the postcard clubs are very important and very useful. You can be a member of postcard clubs all over the world, and that you receive postcards and you send them out. I think people are basically using first class postage stamps for that. But it's kind of fun to get postcards from all over the world. And we've seen a lot of people have used older postcards for artwork. Um, and again, to reiterate, basically whatever you're interested in, there's a series of postcards about that. And we're at 2:55, and I'm done. I didn't get to show you all of the other things because I was really focused on um, the sides to get through this. But I think that this is hopefully a start for you, and I hope that you find that this interesting. And to me, postcards are a fascinating way to go back and look at the history of Flint, Michigan, Detroit, wherever you are, and wherever you're interested in looking at. Um, and so, thank you. I do have my contact information here, and it was shared out by Kevin earlier. If you have any questions, you can, I think you can put them in the chat right now, um, if that's possible, or
Yep.
you can write me and I can follow up later.
Yep, we have time for a couple of quick questions if you want to put them in the chat. If they're more extensive, yeah, you can shoot Corey an email. And if you come back to this video later today, I'll have all these links in the description, so they
Oh,
should be
thank
easy
you.
to access. You mentioned lately that people aren't mailing out their postcards, they're mostly keeping them as collectibles. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I've have mine. I go on trips, I buy a postcard, and I just keep it as like a souvenir of that trip,
Uh,
never to be mailed.
yeah, sometimes I'll use it for this is not a postcard, but I'll use it as like a bookmark.
Mhm.
It's a nice way to remember. And one of the things, I don't know if I've got them right here. One of the things when I do these programs in person, I bring some postcards that I've created, and I also have some additional postcards that I've picked up that I'm just sort of, you know, sharing. And if anyone wants to grab them, that's fine too. But um, it's kind of nice to have something to uh, just send. And I always think receiving something in the mail is way more fun
Mhm.
sometimes than receiving an email or a
Oh,
text.
definitely.
It just takes a lot longer. You just have to bake that
Mhm.
into the timing.
And there's a joy to that physical item, that tactileness, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. Trying to think. I don't know where those are. I guess I don't know where I put them. So
Well, I don't see any questions, but you can email Corey anytime. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Corey, for the presentation.
and thank you for hosting me at the Genesee District Library.
Thank you, and have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Okay. Take care.